The movie begins in 1944 Germany, and revolves around a 16-year-old biracial girl named Lena, who is being pursued by the Gestapo. They arrive at her home and interrogate her mother, Kirsten, about her whereabouts. Kirsten states that she's in Lübeck with her aunt. The Gestapo ultimately leaves, and Lena's mother discloses that Lena is hiding in a secret chamber. Following that, they board a train bound for Berlin, where people like Lena are not subject to the same stringent laws. Despite having more freedom than Jews thanks to her German mother, she faces discrimination because of her black father. Kuhn, Lena's brother, gets bored and says that he cannot sketch in his art book without a pencil. A soldier approaches them, smiling and handing the youngster a pencil. The soldier then notices Lena and asks for her papers. He queries her surname before rudely returning her papers. She goes to school and gets to know her new teacher and classmates. The teacher then criticizes her appearance, referring to it as ungerman. Lena defends herself by claiming that her mother is German. The teacher inquires about her father's name, but she can't respond. That night, when Lena asks her mother about her father, Kirsten doesn't tell her much. On her way home the next day, Lena passes some marching Jews. After that, a young man tells her she should march with them before shoving her into the crowd. Another young man on the other side of the street observes Lena, her mother, and her brother as they pay a visit to her aunt. Her aunt then tells her mother that she didn't expect the two youngsters to come along, and is concerned that someone saw Lena enter. Her uncle then comes, and Lena's mother begs him for forged documents certifying Lena's sterilization. She claims that she will no longer disturb the two of them if he performs this for her. Soon, Lena and her brother go to buy some bread. As people begin to queue behind the two siblings, Gunther jokes with the clerk, and an old guy tells Gunther to hurry up. Later, Kuhn joins the Hitler Youth, which forces him to leave. His mother tells him that he may learn things that differ from what she taught him and that he should be able to choose correct and incorrect. Elena observes as he joins the other boys in marching away. Lena is on her way to work the next morning, when a boy dressed in a Hitler Youth uniform slams her with his bike. Lena collapses and injures her face. While her mother cautions him, the boy, Lutz, picks up her belongings and hands them back to her before she and her mother walk away. Lutz's father observes the situation from an adjacent building. Lutz arrives at his office, and his father questions him about why he arrived so early. He claims that the leaders plan to meet before the junior members arrive. After noticing the wounds on her face, Lena and her mother then go to a neighbor for a cone. The neighbor then hands her mother a letter, claiming that it was delivered by a man while they were out. She identifies it as Lena's uncle. When the two of them meet, he hands her some documents to sign along with some instructions. He then informs Kirsten that she should leave him, and his wife alone for the time being. Lutz and his father afterward polish shoes together. Lutz says he did well today, but he doesn't get any credit from his father, who instead says they'll go fishing. Meanwhile, Lena's mother hands her uncle's paperwork and instructs her to sign it. She refuses, and her mother tells her that the Nazis will sterilize her if she doesn't comply. Lena gets hauled out of school the next day. She runs home, and her mother is relieved that she is all right. Lena begins her labor assignment. She and her mother are driving home when she runs into Lutz again. They exchange glances, and Lutz's father inquires whether he will be riding in the car with him. Lutz then claims he'll just ride his bike home. He eventually follows Lena, and inquires about her well-being. She claims she's okay and walks away. Lena witnesses German soldiers mocking Gunther one day. She runs away and watches as they force him to remove his pants. The soldiers discover that he is circumcised, indicating that he is Jewish. They shot him in the private parts first, and then in the head. That night, Lena and her family eat calmly until Kuhn is disturbed by the fact that Gunther is a Jew. Lena then assures him that he is a nice Jew, while their mother argues that it doesn't matter if he is a Jew or not because he is human. Luz begins to express an interest in fighting on the front lines of the conflict. His father doesn't want to and recounts his previous military experiences. Lena observes as members of the Hitler Youth gather for a procession outside their homes. Her mother is repairing a radio carrying a speech from the opposing side of the conflict. She goes out and tries to join the parade, but the other kids are appalled by her. She then flees and follows them from a distance, as they form a line near a woodland. Lutz discovers her hiding among the trees, and warns her that she may face the consequences of her actions. She tells him she was wondering what Kuhn was up to with their group. He then informs her that he saw a woman similar to her on the cover of a jazz CD owned by his grandfather. He then takes her to a lake and asks about her mother and father. She says that she had always wanted to swim in the lake at night, but had a traumatic experience in her hometown. Lutz then dives into the lake, where they both swim about. As soldiers pass by, they are almost seen together, but Lena hides underwater. At one of their meetups, they begin to evolve closer. When Lutz asks if Lena's father, a soldier, fought for Germany, she says yes, even though she is unsure. That night, her mother informs her that her father was in the French army and was an adversary of Germany. Her mother speaks to her in French, but she gets more enraged. Her mother then warns her that Lutz's father will kill him if he finds out about them. The next day after work, Lena informs her mother that she forgot her gloves. Before leaving to meet up with Lutz, they begin to kiss as fighter jets pass by. Before she returns to her mother for target practice, he gives her some cheese. When Lutz hears a child's insult, he pulls the youngster away and feeds him dirt as punishment. Later, when Lena arrives, she pursues her brother and asks whether he still loves her, but she says he hates her since she's a girl. The Gestapo arrives at their house one night and demands Lena's papers. He begins to inspect them before burning them. Meanwhile, Lutz is still attempting to persuade his father to let him fight in the war, but his father refuses. Lena notices troops obstructing the road, stopping her from returning home. Lutz notices and takes her to his house when his father is abroad to keep her safe. He shows her the jazz album and plays it through the sonogram. They dance and eventually make love. Lutz is stopped by troops patrolling the streets due to the curfew. Lena's mother runs into a soldier on their way to work, and another warns them to stop walking. He requests their papers, but Lena doesn't have any. She then attempts to meet with Lutz, but one man informs him that he has already departed. When she arrives at work, she notices that some troops are going through everyone's paperwork. One soldier approaches her, but she diverts his attention by pointing out a woman attempting to flee. She flees but is stopped by another soldier and transported to one of the labor camps. While waiting in line, she is assigned to work in the kitchen. One day, the girl next to her nearly passes out. Her shoes are broken, and her feet are bleeding. The girl nearly collapses, but Lena catches her. They return to their bunk, and Lena discovers someone else is sleeping in her bed. She begins to mock them by calling them Jews, while the other person mocks her for being black. Instead, the girl she met earlier persuades Lena to bunk with her. Later that night, Hermina, the girl, informs her that Lana's stomach is round, indicating that she is pregnant. She then asks Lena whether she knows what goes on at the Jewish rat house, but she doesn't respond. The next morning, Lena sits outside, where she can view the rat house. She notices ash falling as a few specks settle on her hand. She then looks scared on the other side. Lutz is spotted aboard a military vehicle after some time has passed. Meanwhile, workers in the labor camp find Lutz's family ring that he gave to Lena. The woman tells her friends that she will give her a potato to trade for better shoes. She tells Hermina that she has declared to the authorities that she is sterilized. Hermina then assists her in tying her stomach in order to conceal her pregnancy. Lena takes a potato from the kitchen to give to her bunkmate. A guard sees her and orders her to remove her clothes. Lutz then arrives and is surprised to see her in the camp. The guard then exits after he agrees to search her bunker. Lena's bunkmate comes, and Lutz leads. Lutz then goes to his father's office. His father notices his pallor and inquires whether he is ill. Lutz then questions his father about why he was sent to the camp. His father then explains that it was done to keep him safe, and out of harm's way while still serving his country. Lena allows Hermina to take a taste of the potato before safeguarding it. She then removes her shoes and wraps her foot in bandages. The next morning, Lena cleans the windows of Lutz's father's office. Before returning to work, she sees the ring on his finger. Later, Lutz asks Lena to accompany him to a safe spot to discuss. Lutz questions her about how she got into the camp and where her mother is, but she doesn't respond. She expresses her displeasure that he abruptly left without informing her. Luz responds that he has been summoned, and doesn't have any choice. He then invites her to see him tonight so that he can give her food. Meanwhile, another officer begins questioning Lutz's father's devotion because he hasn't signed an order to clear the children from the camp. Lena slips out one night because of Lutz's connection to a merchant, and he provides her with some food. They hug, and Lutz offers her his coat to keep her warm. Meanwhile, a soldier returns Lena's ring to Lutz's father. Lutz walks with his father the next morning, and they sit while looking at Lena. His father extends a cigarette to him, but he declines, appearing anxious. That night, his father signed a document permitting the transfer of the women to a different camp. The people within Lena's bunker are then awakened by one of the camp staff members. Hermina then fails to locate her shoes, and she begins to panic. She insists that the person sleeping next to them get her shoes, but Lena tells her that the individual is no longer alive. One of the soldiers notices that Hermina is missing her shoes. He then summons Lutz and directs him to shoot her. He hesitates, and the cop fires the shot. Lena vomits, and the cop points his revolver at her before she passes out. Lutz assaults another lady in line to distract the officer. Lutz and Lena then argue about how he should have just killed Hermina, but Lutz feels it would have been cruel. Lena then complains about how, despite her pride in being German, she is still discriminated against. He proposes to escape from the camp and flee Germany, but Lena refuses. She declares that she no longer wishes to conceal her identity and that she wishes to be herself. Lutz discovers that the convicts are being relocated. Lutz provides Lena with a military outfit, and urges her to wear it as a disguise that night. She gets terrified as she begins to shift and returns to her prisoner's clothing. The next day, she runs back to her barracks. Due to the latest attack, the camp and detainees are being relocated soon. Lutz refuses to go, and later informs his father that Lena is pregnant with their kid before fleeing to find her. He ultimately spots Lena among the crowd, and begins walking toward her, but he is fatally shot by his father. The crowd disperses when the Americans capture the base and end the war. Lena looks at Lutz's body, which had been left behind. Then she is carried away by a black man. Lena is placed in a displaced persons camp 7 weeks later. Her savior approaches her and begins speaking to her in French. He then informs her that she is not registered and asks for her name. After that, he refers to her as a good German girl. Lena eventually reunites with her brother and mother. The end.